Okay, so let's begin just with some traditional prayers, refuge, and so forth. And then we're going to go into some practice for the majority of the time. And then we'll open it up at the end for some sharing, for some teaching on the practices that we've done, and then some sharing going back and forth. So we have 2 hours today. Begin with this. Namo Buddhaya Gurave. Namo Dharmaya Tayine. Namo Sangaya Mahate. Trimyubi Satatanama. O Namo Buddhaya Gurave. Namo Dharmaya Tayine. Namo Sangaya Mahate. Trimyubi Satatanama. O Namo Buddhaya Gurave. Namo Dharmaya Tayine. Namo Sangaya Mahate. Trimyubi Satatanama. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Udada Senjin Tanji Lo Chusu Jawar Jinji Latu So Landu Jawar Jinji Latu So Lanchumba Sawar Jinji Latu So Chumba Yashisu Jawar Jinji Latu So Lai Gina Luna Nojingi Jamundana Mi Ginandra Drawa Kunji Jigi Jisamba Tanji Kidu Daki Chorchindu Damba Lai Londinji Sunan Jame Namiri Jui Jizin Kajinjin Kamambala Zawadi Juzun Jawi Jizu Kamabe Rajan Chinli Jula Wanjawa Tai Siddha Raja Chira Rimba Jamba Nala Sawade Jamba Jamalina Nambadro Jazi Laji Yanji Josumba Kabab Dunan Pema Dayali Jayan Jense Wumbo Swade Kadarla Zimbero Number Drew Soji Naji Sindan Lazode Remain Tenze Yanjen Tanzode Ludo Tai Shala Swade Omin Chuji Inji Purani Dusan Sanji Guji Noni Ransan Chuku Nonsun Tozebi Sawe Lama Shabla Swade. Okay, so we begin with Bodhichitta, which is the thought that in order to benefit all beings whose numbers fill the extent of space, we're going to listen to and contemplate and then practice the profound Mahayana Dharma. And we do this in order to reach the level of full awakening, Dorje Chang, of Buddhahood, and thereby bring all beings to that same state. So we're going to unpack all of that now in practice, but to whatever extent you can connect with that thought now, just beginning with this idea that, first of all, we're oriented altruistically, we're orienting towards benefiting others. So noticing that shift in and of itself. And that orientation is vast. We say all sentient beings whose numbers fill the extent of space. But for now, just feeling into what it's like to open that altruistic wish as much as you can. And that tied up with that, or as a consequence of that, we're not just wishing for the benefit of limitless beings, but we're wishing for the full awakening of all beings. So feel into that, again, a different kind of nuance to that altruistic orientation. And that the full awakening of all beings is connected to our own awakening. That these are contingent upon one another. So feel into that aspect, wishing for our own awakening for the benefit of all, awakening of all. And it's fine, whatever that is, it doesn't matter right now. We're just kind of opening that door and feeling how that arises. What is that like when we orient our mind in that way? And just kind of take a snapshot of that. Notice what that's like so we can refer to that later as a contrast point. Noticing, maybe any kind of rawness or sleepiness or edginess or openness, spaciousness, warmth, whatever it might be. Just noticing that. So this is our starting point. And even within this starting point, if you look, no matter how wretched you might feel, how limited, how self-absorbed, or how expansive, try to look right at the essence of that mind that is oriented in that way, the Bodhichitta mind. Try to look, glance at that mind, just for a moment. Okay. So now we're going to do some breathing. Begin just with your hands on your hips. And bring the breath all the way down into the belly. And feel how the belly expands as you breathe in and releases as you breathe out. And just as a very basic attention practice, following that, but also feeling it, kind of entering into the sensation of the belly breathing, and also feeling how it is contained by the way we're holding with our hands. And try to explore how you can actually signal to your body, your nervous system, body, mind, that you are caring. That this posture, this holding, is not just kind of performative posture, but we're actually supporting and nourishing the breath in the body and the belly. We're going to go deeper into this breath by exploring the 4 stages. There is, of course, breathing in and out. But as you breathe in, feel what it's like to pause at the top of the breath so the belly is full. Holding briefly, and then again breathing out, and then pausing at the end, at the bottom of the breath, empty. Just breathe at your own pace. There's no particular duration, but try to explore these 4 moments. Breathing in and holding, breathing out and holding. And as you hold, notice how the body may be holding tension. Any kind of extraneous tension in the body. See if you can release that, holding gently, whether full or empty, and using that as a moment to feel the body as a whole. And release tension. Anything that's not persistent, chronic. Let's try to extend each of these 4 stages in a way that's comfortable, but still extending the holds, extending the in and the out. And really settling awareness in the belly, letting that be home base, the anchor. And especially on the out breath now, try to squeeze all the breath out so that that space of the belly is being reduced down to a single point, just in the lower belly. And as you breathe in, let the breath emerge from that point. That is the the bottom of the vessel that you're filling. I invite you to shift up into the chest with your hands, or with your thumbs in the armpits and hands over the upper chest. And breathe in from the belly, and then fill all the way up to this level. And the posture of the arms here allows for the breath to come up into the chest and the sides of the chest, the back. And as you breathe out, go all the way down, down to that point in the lower belly. So that we're breathing in the shape of a V. The bottom of the V is in the lower belly. It's where the breath begins. And as we breathe in, it goes upward and outward. We hold, and then as we breathe out, it goes all the way downward and inward to that point as we squeeze the breath out. And again, with this posture, both when you're holding full and when you're holding empty, use that time to explore the body and release any tension that isn't necessary. A few more breaths like this. It takes a little bit of effort to hold the arms up. Okay, one more breath. And whenever you're done, exhaling, letting your hands come down to rest, and breathing naturally with the belly. Noticing sensation in the body. Notice what has shifted or clarified. And one last stage, bringing your thumbs to your clavicles, and then raising your elbows as much as you can without straining, and breathe in with the belly. Fill the chest, fill all the way up to the top of the chest. Hold for a brief time. Let the breath mix through the body, kind of just like it's soaking it up through the whole body. Exhaling all the way down to the lower belly. A little more breath. And next exhalation, the hands float down. Breathe with the belly. Feel the body as a whole. So with this, we're refreshing the winds of the body. I'll talk more about that later. It's a way of completely changing the stale wind of the body for a more fresh and vital wind. We're going to do some movements now to train the channels of the body, and we'll be breathing in the same way. So begin just with your hands on your knees. Breathe with the belly, and breathe all the way up to the chest in this case, and then all the way back down, squeezing out of the belly, just gently. You don't have to accentuate the squeeze. Just finding that rhythm again, complete breathing. Now inhaling. As you exhale, bring your left shoulder in the direction of your right knee, bending, twisting, going down, keeping the left arm straight, pausing for a moment at the end, and breathing in, coming all the way back up to center, and then exhaling now to the left, right shoulder to the left knee, all the way down. In and out 3 times. Feeling particularly in the center of the chest, the heart. Feeling also how this affects the belly. Just feeling the inside of the body as you breathe and move. Now as you rest at the end, whenever you've completed 3 on each side, use the breath to explore the body. As you breathe in, mix the breath with whatever feels activated. Just traveling through the body, breathing in and mixing. And then as you breathe out, let that breath disperse the sensation. So it carries the sensation outward, breath by breath, dispersing more and more. Breathing in and mixing. Breathing out and dispersing, relaxing. And in breathing this way, we're entering more and more into the body as a whole. the next movement with our hands on our hips, breathing in and twisting as you exhale all the way down the lower belly, exhaling, filling the belly as you twist back, filling the chest, and exhaling from the top down all the way to the belly. Three times to each side. Again, whenever you're resting, breathing in and mixing. Breathing out and dispersing. The next movement, hands on the hips again, breathing in all the way up, and exhaling as you bend to the side, elongating that side, breathing in and out, 3 times to each side, and let the breath lead the movement. First thing is the breath moves and the body follows. Mixing, dispersing, and then starting to feel the body as a whole, and as you breathe out, softening the boundary of the body. The exhalation relaxes and allows the felt sense to open beyond the boundary of the body. You're feeling a little bit all around you, like an envelope of sensation. Each out breath allowing the boundary to become more transparent, more permeable. Now hands on the knees again. And as you breathe in, arch back. Bring the shoulder blades together and back. And as you exhale, curl forward, tucking the chin, bring the shoulders together, and really bringing the belly back towards the spine and squeezing all the breath out. Again, dropping down to that point, that 0 point in the lower belly. And pause there. Fill from the belly, breathing in, and then arching back, filling the chest. Exhaling, rolling down. You can also draw up the perineum at the end of the out breath, that empty hold. Three times. And again, as you exhale, and start to soften around you. See what it's like to open your senses. If your eyes have been closed, auditory sense. And as you breathe out, feel around you and receive phenomena through that sense of feeling. As you breathe out, feel what you see. As you breathe out, open a space of receptivity for what you hear. Let's do one more movement while seated. So this time, breathing in, and then rotating the stomach all the way around the body, kind of articulating the hips, letting the stomach, that lower belly, kind of flow to each side in a circle all the way around. And then reverse. Okay. We're going to come back to Bodhichitta now in a moment. But first, let's put a hand on our belly and one on our chest. And again, feeling what it's like to have these spaces be supported by our hands. So as we breathe and we feel into them, now maybe for some people it's easier just to focus on the heart, some of the belly, and maybe both belly and chest. But as you breathe, try to feel where the body is holding. Where is kind of your center of gravity for the dimension of feeling? And as you breathe and hold, again, indicating to the body that this is an act of care, that we are supporting, that we are present, that we are attending to the condition of the body and what is being held there. And we're attending without any agenda. Breathing in and feeling, and breathing out and allowing space, acceptance. And we're allowing this space of the body, whatever it is that we're attending to be known, to make itself known, to allow it the opportunity without forcing anything, to allow it to speak. So whatever it is that we're feeling and holding can come to the surface and be known. If there is anxiety or depression or peace, if there is regret or longing, if there's care and receiving care, again, just notice. And the basic point here is to indicate to our body-mind that we are present, that we are not ignoring, but we are also not invading. We're not prying. We're just here to know, to witness, to listen, to hold the space and contain. You can let your hands down now, and feel the space that remains. Kind of tenderness or vulnerability in the front of the body. And stay with that feeling, whatever it is that has arisen. Not trying to go beyond it, get done with it. Stay in touch. And again, through intention, feel what it's like to wish for the benefit of others. Just a general altruistic orientation. From that place in the body, in full acknowledgement of what we are feeling ourselves, wishing for the benefit of others. And if it's helpful, you can use the out breath to carry that wish, breathing out through that space in the body and just kind of radiating that wish, general wish for benefit. Try to notice how this carrying attention to our own condition is connected to the way that we care beyond ourselves. And try to keep them both alive and present. Feeling our own condition and wishing for the benefit of others. Now expand that wish, that altruistic wish, as much as you can to this idea of all beings. So what is it like to move from this, whatever limited wish, to expand that to our capacity? Opening that wish panoramically all around, through the felt sense of the body, and wishing for the benefit of all. And the benefit of all, again, includes ourselves. You can notice what it's like to be able to maintain this care for oneself and the wish for a universal, altruistic benefit. Again, you can use the out breath as a support for developing that wish. You can use the felt sense, expanding all around you, as a kind of vector to carry this wish. And finally, again, as we did initially, notice the shift now as we move from wishing altruistic, universal benefit to actual bodhicitta, wishing for the full awakening of all beings. May all beings be completely free of suffering. May they fully actualize their qualities of wisdom and compassion. May they be totally free. May they have true and lasting peace. May their Buddha nature ripen. Notice that shift from altruistic mind to bodhicitta mind. And again, this is balance between one's own full awakening, one's own Buddha nature, wishing for that to ripen fully, and feeling that, and balancing that with the ripening of the Buddha nature of all beings. And as you tap into that, like open that, the inner and the outer, there's less distinction. Look at the quality of that mind that is resting in this wish. Mind that is impartial, that is beyond the limitation of inner and outer, that is free of any limitation, whether that is suffering, partiality, boundary. Or wholeness. Just look at that mind of Bodhicitta. Notice its qualities. Let go of any effort in wishing, any kind of agency of doing something. Okay, to whatever extent, again, taking another kind of snapshot here, noticing what this experience of bodhicitta is like. Okay, next thing we'll do is to lie down. Hopefully you have capacity to do that where you are. If not, you need to arrange your space. You don't need to see me. Just here. And so when you lie down, you want to bring your feet up, knees bent, feet a little bit far apart by your hips. Let the knees come together. And then just rest your hands on the lower belly. And in these initial moments, just let the whole thing drop. Whatever kind of effort that you've been applying to maintain a posture, to maintain attention, holding anything together whatsoever, just let it all flow and drop backward and downward. As if you've just, settled into a very deep comforter on a bed, very plush, and just feel that sense of the body sinking and resting. And move your awareness through the body just in an open way, in your own way. Breathing in and sensing any areas of solidity or tension. And breathing out and letting that soften and flow backward and downward. Now we're going to be working with the lower belly again, exploring that point that we developed earlier. So as you breathe in, you fill the lower belly and allow the small of the back to rise up a little bit. So the hips are rotating away from your face and the lower belly is expanding. The lower back, the sacrum, is tilting up. And then as you exhale, draw the belly back towards the spine, lifting the tailbone a little bit, curling the hips towards the face, and squeezing the belly out, and drawing up the perineum and squeezing that whole region down to that point below the navel. And then breathing in. And out. And there's a kind of rocking, flowing motion that follows the breath. As we breathe in, sacrum tilts, the lower back arches, belly fills. As we breathe out, belly drops, squeezes toward the spine, the tailbone lifts. And that articulation of the sacrum and the hips is important for developing the energy there. And again, we can rest at the end of the out breath for a few moments. We can rest at the top of the breath, full, for a few moments. And as we did before, start to explore these 4 moments of the breath, in and out, full and empty, and starting to extend the duration. And in this case, there's a little bit more intensity, especially at the end of the out breath when we're empty. And on the next exhalation, try to hold empty for as long as is comfortable. And then when you're done, just gently release and breathe with the belly. And stay with the belly. Breathing. Let the whole body relax again. And again, if your eyes are closed, allowing them to open, but breathing out and just feeling backward and downward as you breathe out. letting tension flow from the body down into the space of the earth behind you. But even if your eyes are open, there's really no fixation above you, in front of you. Just releasing backward, flowing downward with each out breath. And we're allowing the space of the belly, specifically in the body, space of the body in general, to just empty out, to become more spacious. At the same time, more vivid, more immediately felt and alive. Let's do another round of breathing with the lower belly. Breathing in, arching up. Breathing out, squeezing out. And try to accentuate the empty hold at the end of the breath. Feeling that point in the lower belly, kind of sparking it. A few more breaths. And really feeling that at the end of the out breath, all kind of thoughts and feelings are being attracted down into that space of the belly. And just dissolving there, funneling down. And the next exhalation, hold empty for as long as is comfortable. And then relax. And let the body unfold and fall back. Let the space above be released of any fixation, and let the space of the body flow backward and downward. And allow this space of the body to simply be at rest. We feel behind us, the space behind, this vastness, the openness. And whatever is held in the body can be offered into that space and released. And let the space above us naturally free of fixation. And that these three, above, below, and the space of the body between, are always and already simply space. Awareness, permeating space, with no above or below, or center, or edge. Okay, let's come back up into a seated position. And just take a few breaths to, again, integrate, feeling the space below you, breathing out, relaxing downward, opening the senses. And again, just maybe a hand on the chest or the belly or both. And now feeling into that space as you breathe. Notice what is being held there. If anything, give it time. You let your hand down, and again, now opening. Again, this wish for the benefit of others. panoramically. And this time, recognizing that all of the life around you is pervaded by Buddha nature, your own body, and that of all beings. Feel what it's like to extend your awareness all around, honoring, acknowledging the pervasiveness of Buddha nature. Every particle of existence containing universes of Buddha realms populated by immeasurable Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. One's own body permeated by Buddha nature. Looking at the nature of one's own mind, the quality of awareness that rests in this way, the vividness and the spaciousness, the clarity and the emptiness, beyond any limitation. So notice this quality of bodhicitta, the mind that rests in the always already awakened nature of all phenomena, all beings, all appearances. And in this there is no agency, there is nothing to be done. There is complete reflection. Part and whole. Just rest. Even just for an instant, a glimpse. Then of course we can fall back, a more tangible aspect. May all beings actualize their potential for Buddha nature. May I help all beings to develop that potential. Falling back on something more referential, feeling into one's own body, mind, and the conditioned aspect. Wishing again, may all beings be free, may they be free of suffering, may they be happy, may they be at peace. And then using that as a segue into openness, the quality of that wish can open a space that we can step off into and simply rest, nothing needing to be done. There's just the unending resonance of that as the natural state. Okay. So what we've just gone through has been a blending of different approaches to what is called bodhicitta that has different meanings and different contexts. And on one hand, as we've just done, all of these contexts and the meanings can be blended because they evoke one another in different ways. They are not disconnected. So we don't want to say that they're all the same, different dimensions of bodhicitta, nor are they different. So just to talk about the differences, in the beginning we start with what is called bodhicitta in the Mahayana context. And this is what is most commonly referred to when people say we're going to practice bodhicitta, we're going to give rise to bodhicitta, what is generally done at the beginning of teachings, like we did. And in that context, I know many of you are probably familiar, but it's important to just kind of talk about the traditional presentation of that. Bodhicitta is of two kinds. There is the conditioned aspect of, we are doing something, and there is the unconditioned aspect, sometimes called ultimate bodhicitta, that has no reference points, is not something that needs to be cultivated, has no cause particularly, and that the relative aspect, or the conditioned, and the unconditioned, or the ultimate, actually form a union, and that the path is about bringing them together. So within the conditioned aspect, there are also two dimensions. One is wishing, which is what we were doing, aspiring, setting the mind in a particular way. And the other is action, actually doing, bringing out that wish in action, whether in words or with the body. And and that is done through the six perfections, doing generous acts, applying aspects of discipline, of effort, of concentration, of wisdom. All of these aspects of the six perfections are how that wish gets played out in our lives and is shared between us. So that's all very essential and important, and is basically the kind of bread and butter of our practice. Every day we ground ourselves in that wish, use it as kind of true north. It is the guide for everything that we do. The wish to awaken in order to benefit all beings and lead them to their awakening. So bodhicitta is not just an altruistic wish, but it has to include that dimension of full awakening, that we are wishing for and working towards the full awakening of the potential of all beings, which includes ourselves. Sometimes we want to become a Buddha first and lead all beings. Sometimes we want to achieve that awakening together with all beings. And sometimes we want all beings to achieve that first, and we're just going to hang out and do whatever we can to make that happen. And the distinction there is that there's less and less physical agency involved. In the beginning, it's I'm going to do this, and I'm going to lead everybody, and so that makes more sense from a conventional point of view. You can't help others until you've helped yourself, kind of thing, and you don't have the power to actually guide others and help them in that deep way unless you actually know what the destination yourself. So that makes a lot of sense. And so generally we start there. But then there's also the attitude of doing it all together, that we're kind of all in this together, and I don't have this kind of self-importance that says I need to do it first, but it's actually we're all progressing together in this common interest and common path. And so that that is a little bit more genuine in a sense. And then the third of kind of hanging out and waiting and having everyone go first is the most kind of humble, and actually is the most wise, because it really doesn't have anything to do with you and the change that you're affecting in this kind of instrumental way. But that the humility that wishes for the awakening of all beings far before your own awakening and your own benefit is actually closer to something that is more genuine. So this is Mahayana Bodhichitta, and this is balanced with, within Mahayana Bodhichitta, that was the relative side, and the ultimate side is what authenticates it. And you can see in those three versions of, it's called the king who leads, the boatman, or the ferryman or something like that, who goes along with everyone, and the shepherd who stays back and has everyone go first. You can see the progression there. There's less and less ego involved, basically, and there's more and more of a sense of space. It's like the shepherd has a lot of time and space, and so therefore everyone can kind of go first. The king, there's no time. Just you need to lead, you need to do it yourself, and then you need to bring everybody along with you. So you can kind of see in that progression, it's actually moving more towards what is ultimate bodhicitta, which is the understanding that there's actually nothing to be done, that the true nature of all beings and all things is already in that place, but that we are not recognizing that. We're not able to see that or appreciate that. So there are layers of obscuration that need to be removed. And that's really what the path is doing. So that these two kind of aspects of the relative and the ultimate are brought together. So you kind of alternate generally between one and the other. And then when you're too far on the side of kind of doing things, then it's good to remember the always already. And when you're too far on the side of the kind of complacency of always and already, then you need to apply yourself more. And so the path is really about bringing those two truths into a union where they are integrated. And so that approach is unique to the Mahayana approach to bodhicitta. Then, so we did a little bit of that, but almost immediately we started to move our body and breathe, right? And so we probably don't have time to get into all three dimensions, but just to start with the second context, that of Vajrayana, it is built on Mahayana Bodhicitta, but acknowledges that the relative and the ultimate, the union of those, is not something abstract, but is actually something that occurs in the body-mind. That using the body as the locus for developing bodhicitta is very expedient. not just the kind of wishing of the mind and acting with body and speech, but that bodhicitta lives in the body, and that the way that bodhicitta lives in the body is understood in terms of the winds of the body and the pathways or channels that those winds travel on in the body, and the what are called the vital essences or the nuclei or the bindu in Sanskrit. In Tibetan it's called tigle, where the winds collect and kind of coalesce into something that is a support for awareness in a very essentialized way. And that these three, the winds, the channels, and the drops, or the nuclei, together are the way that bodhicitta lives in the body. And so that through working with the winds, the channels, and the drops, we're actually working with bodhicitta. And we won't get into how Vajrayana or Tantra makes sense of that, explains that, but just in what we went through experientially, I hope that you got a taste of that. Most pointedly, by comparing that first snapshot when we're wishing with the second one when we had done a little bit more of the body work and breathing, and then we revisited that same wish. So I'm curious to hear how that was for you. But in general, you probably experienced that it was much easier, in a sense, more direct, more full, perhaps, more deeper, whatever these very vague words might refer to. Um, in some way, there was a shift, and it was a shift in the right direction, kind of thing. And so, when we work with the bodhicitta in the body, again, there's we were working with the breath in this exercise, purifying the breath. In that dimension, there's also many different ways of clearing the breath and refreshing it, visualizations that balance the elements of the breath and bring out the potency, to extract the pure potency of the breath, the winds. All of these affect bodhicitta in a very direct way, because when the breaths are kind of stuck in like cul-de-sacs in the body, um, it's called stale wind or dead wind. Um, and whenever we're having kind of compulsive thoughts, which are, if they're compulsive, they're always based in ego, um, those compulsive self-referential, self-preoccupied thoughts live and get lodged in the body. And to the extent that we're preoccupied with ourselves, we're not going to be able to be altruistic, let alone have an altruistic mind, a mind of bodhicitta. So, by working with the way that these winds have become stuck in the body and liberating them, expelling the stale wind, sometimes it's called, or harmonizing the winds and refreshing them, as you experienced with what we were doing there, then there is a freedom from that conceptual compulsive thing, and then those winds then can then be applied or are naturally oriented to benefiting others. And there really isn't a sense so much of me versus other anymore. It's just a kind of state of self-existing benefit. And similarly, when maybe more pointedly when we're doing the motions, and in those motions are blending the winds and the channels that those winds are flowing through, and we're kind of smoothing out the channels. We're conditioning them, toning them. We're moving the breath through them in a way that is more harmonious. And so then when that has been established, then the winds can flow more reliably in that way. And similarly, when patterns of winds become compulsive and self-referential, that becomes entrained in a certain way, inscribed in the body, that the channels then get knotted, they become contorted or blocked in different ways. And so when the channels of the body are blocked and the winds are blocked, and it's just a kind of another elaboration on that same principle, that then in that blockage there is no capacity for altruistic, it's all self-referential and self-focused, where we've kind of imploded in on ourselves somatically. And so the capacity to actually care is limited. Again, let alone bodhicitta. But then when the channels and winds are restored to their natural state, that is bodhicitta. Not only is it something that allows us to apply our vitality to benefiting others, but that state of the balanced, purified Vajra body is itself bodhicitta. And it gains an even deeper kind of resonance with the aspects of the drops, the subtle drops, which are called bodhicitta in and of themselves. They're named bodhicitta. And so there are many of them, different ones. Two aspects in particular are central, that in the belly and that in the head. And we worked more particularly with the belly in this case. So when we were lying down, we were doing the belly breathing, and we were squeezing all the breath out and then just focusing on that point in the navel. What this is doing is inviting all of the winds to gather and dissolve into that place. And the more that the conceptual winds, the proliferation of thoughts, all of that gathers and dissolves, what emerges is a pristine state of mind. That wind has been brought into a harmonious state of dissolution, it resolves itself, and in that wisdom arises. And that wisdom that arises is bodhicitta in and of itself. Of course, it can be applied in the normal Mahayana sense in acts of generosity, of patience, of discipline, of effort, of samadhi, of meditation. But in and of itself, in the Vajrayana context, that is self-existing bodhicitta in the body. And when it is purified, it is ever more so, right? So starting to kind of experience that is really important, both as, primarily as a support for our practice of bodhicitta in the Mahayana sense, which is again what we fall back on, but also to start to glimpse that pure view that our own body-mind and then is itself bodhicitta, and that also everything that is arising around us is a reflection of that. Other beings, and other, life in general is that. And then starting to segue then into a view in which everything that arises is permeated with bodhicitta. And this is kind of where we landed at the end of that practice, where this is a kind of third context, that which is talked about more directly in the Dzogchen tradition, with what is called Semde, or Jungtrip Sem De. De means category or class, and Sem is mind, but it's short for Jungtrip Sem, or bodhicitta. So it's the approach of the nature of mind, the primordial nature of mind, that is bodhicitta. So in this case, not only is the natural state of the body, the embodied mind, bodhicitta, but bodhicitta is the natural state of everything. There's no boundary, there's no limitation, there's no outside of that. Bodhicitta is the very fabric of all that arises, even the most horrible, even the most depraved. And in this view, of course, that is not always easy to maintain. But maybe a little bit at the end when we're resting after we sat up again, and appreciating the pervasiveness of everything that arises as the what I said was total reflection. So this idea that every part of anything that can be perceived, especially including the perceiver, is mirrored by everything else, and that all of this is pervaded by bodhicitta, and that there's no inside or outside of that situation. The nature of mind doesn't have corners or top or bottom or reference point. And so that very mind, which is also a type of tigle or bindu, that is all inclusive, that is itself bodhicitta. So, in that view, bodhicitta is everything and always has been and always will be, and there's no um, diminution of that, there's no fracturing of that. It doesn't decrease or increase, it simply is the abiding nature. And so, that, in some ways could be similar to what is called ultimate bodhicitta in the Mahayana context. But the difference is that in the Mahayana context, there's two things: there's ultimate and there's relative. And the idea is to integrate them and bring them together into a union. Similarly, in the Vajrayana context, there is the aspects of duality and the winds, the kind of proliferation of conceptual winds that are desire and anger, and that we want to bring them together into a state of unity, which is dissolution, where they resolve themselves into emptiness. But in the view of the mind class of the Great Perfection, it's not a unity, it is an inseparability. There has never been two. There is not something that needs to be brought together again into a higher state of resolution or union. And so there's a kind of distinction there. But at the same time, we can kind of see that we can kind of move between these different dimensions or contexts, and we can see how they flow into one another. And sometimes when we have that view of everything always already, and things start to get sticky, as we did at the end, you can step back and come back to the really basic wish. May all beings be awakened. May I completely mature my Buddha nature and lead all beings to that same realization. And that very thought creates a little bit of space and lucidity. Perhaps we feel that in an embodied way, it gives it a little bit more stability. And then we can just let the whole thing go again, and then we're back in simple nature of mind, bodhicitta, as it is. And so kind of seeing how there is a kind of, not necessarily progression, but there is an interdimensional aspect to it that we can move between according to circumstance, and that we can appreciate the virtue of all of those approaches, and we can employ the methods or the releasing of method according to what's appropriate. Anyway, and then one last thing that I forgot, that isn't usually talked about in the traditional sense, but we did it and is really helpful in the context of Mahayana Bodhicitta. It's really important to do the thing with our hand on our heart or belly, to tune into ourselves. That in the context of relative bodhicitta, it's hard to care for others, or it's disingenuous to care for others when we are ignoring our own condition, because then things just kind of get pushed aside and come back later to haunt us. So it's really important that bodhicitta, and even just any altruistic mind, is in touch with the conditioned aspect of our own body mind. And so if there is grief, if there is depression, if there are feelings of self-doubt, self-hatred, whatever it might be, that those are allowed a place to be known, and that whatever work we do is not in spite of that, but is through that, is in the context of that, is in acknowledgement of that condition. And then that actually allows us to move into the unconditioned much more deeply and fully. Because if we're trying to integrate the conditioned and the unconditioned, and there's like all this baggage that we're not wanting to attend to or recognize, then the unconditioned is either a kind of bypass, or it's a kind of abstraction, or it's very superficial. And so we really need to bring the fullness of our brokenness into that journey and that approach. And that carries through all of the other levels as well. You know, in our Vajra body, you know, everything is not always blissful, right? So this aspect of agony, appreciating that as part of bodhicitta, it doesn't have to be unconditioned bliss always. You know, sometimes we don't feel well, our heart is closed, you know, we have pain here or there, whatever it might be. But that is also bodhicitta. And if we can acknowledge that and accept that, then we can actually enter into that other dimension of bodhicitta, that never there was never separation in the first place. There was never this alternation between agony and bliss. It simply is as it is, and it has always been bodhicitta in that way. Anyway, so that's a lot of concepts, and you know there might be. I think it would all of that which I just said really does demand more time to unfold. But this is just to give you a kind of bird's eye view of different contexts of bodhicitta and how we might begin to experience that in our own dimension. Right? So good. That's all for me for now. Anybody have anything that you'd like to ask about any of that, or any reflections on the practices, and especially anything if I lost you at any point or something was challenging or didn't make sense, to ask about that. Yeah, Jan?
Oh, let me give you permission to unmute. Sorry, Jen. Okay, go ahead, Jen.
You can unmute yourself now, Jan.
Thank you. It seems rather peculiar to me, but what came to mind was very unexpected. When something goes, it almost looks like part of what's going on, a huge part maybe, is the habits that we have trained in since we were born. We have all these different habits, and I'm thinking of the habit of, or what I think's been going on is the habit of considering myself a healthy person. Nothing goes wrong with me. And, but I'll just say it's about 6 months ago, something like that, I started having really pretty severe digestive issues. And my reaction, which is nothing but a habit, is, first of all, this can't be happening. I don't want this to be happening, and all of those sorts of things. So all those sorts of habits, pushing away basically. And what it has turned out to be is actually it was my body speaking to me, trying to speak to me, but I was trying to push the whole situation away. So it was just my body crying out for help. It has taken some exploration. I didn't really know what to do, but I've just had to do some experimentation. Uh, so in short, it sure looks like our habits are one of our big. So I guess our habits are called obscurations. So also, so this seems very simple once I've spied it, but it wasn't simple when the situation arose.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure whether I hope that's tied to what you've been speaking about.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a matter of feeling how your capacity to care for others, both temporarily and ultimately, is living in that space of the belly, and then how the obscuration of that is in some way a limitation of that, but then also how the obscuration or the constriction is itself also an indication of your connection with others. You know that we are tied together in some way, that we are in relationship, and that the pain of that, as long as it's not numbness, which often it is, but as soon as the numbness becomes felt as a lived pain, then that is the very avenue for caring for others. And you can do that conceptually by saying, you know, may this pain, may I take it on for as a substitute for the suffering of others. May my full attention and care for this condition be something that actually is a cause for all beings to be free of that same suffering and all suffering in general. And so that's kind of a mental re contextualization of the situation. Um, but then, in terms of the Vajrayana level, how is that place the seat of bodhicitta in the body for you in that way? And you have to explore that. And how is its constricted state, and how is its open state, you know, relating with that bodhicitta as it is in your body? And so it's just kind of part of that vision, right? But in whatever way, you that is the place where the action happens, you might say. It's a reminder for us to recontextualize, so that it's not all about us, and it's
Mm.
also a very vivid uh, field that is the place of cultivation.
Actually, in thinking it over, yeah, I think I feel in general, well, I'll just speak for myself. Um, when I look over my life, it's been a somewhat fairly comfortable life, I suppose, um, compared to what some challenges some people might have. And so that's also a habit. That if I if any issue arises, that's annoying. Because it interferes with the comfort of life. So it's just, I was just fortunate in my most of my life, but that has caused me. So I guess you could say like a complacency or take for granted. That's the big one. Take that comfortable life for granted. So if anything else comes along, the reaction, this is annoying, get out of here. And we don't even know it's happening as we grow up. It's just sort of a thing that happen. It's something that happens. We just get making more and more and more assumptions and expectations.
So we got 10 minutes. Anybody else? Yeah, Pat, and then Natalie.
Thank you. That was such a useful meditation and teaching. Lots for me to think about. Thank you so much. One of the things that I have been noticing a lot recently is when I sit, I'm finding holding the heart. I like holding the belly at the same time, and how different both of them feel. The Where I'm really struggling is being able to authentically wish all beings, like all underlined beings, well and free of suffering, because I'm just in this stuck place with people who are doing, in my opinion, great harm to many others of us, certainly in this country. And it's a hard, I'm sort of wondering whether it makes my wins, or my wins get all, you said, all sort of knotted up. Doing that, the breathing, I did some earlier on this week, really does feel like a spring cleaning, but then it gets all fouled up again when I think about, well, basically political stuff. And so I'm really working hard on the bodhicitta, but sometimes in those places I really get stuck.
Yeah, no, so that it's it is brings up the question of skillful action and the way that we use our energy um, for you could say justice, um, and the place of energy in that um, applied bodhicitta. And so there's kind of two sides, and again, it's good to fall back on the Mahayana basis, where on one side, resentment doesn't really serve anyone. Sort of like partiality in our altruism doesn't really help anything. Like by reserving something from someone or some group of people, it's really in the end shooting ourselves in the foot with respect to that, larger vision. It's understandable, but so at the same time, there has to be some acknowledgement that that doesn't really work. But at the same time, we it's not just about flushing it all out and feeling good all the time, and not having the rough edges, right? So how then can we actually apply ourselves energetically for change without it falling into this either kind of for and against thing, or falling into a vision where we lose the ultimate context. And so this is that one side of the equation where we're not on the side where we're like kind of spacing out and naively believing everything is perfect and need to be reminded to act. It's the other side where we're so ready to act and to get involved that we lose the ultimate context. So how do we bring that more into balance so that then the actions that we do have, the feelings that we have, and the way that we act on those feelings is coming from a place of wisdom rather than conditioning. And so that's the practice. And to use methods like breath work and body work and aspects of finding the purity within the body and that kind of thing can be helpful. And again, not as ways to just iron everything out so we don't have to feel, but actually to empower in a precise way. And this is what we were talking about last week on Sunday with the aspect of anger, transforming anger into precision so that you actually know the right thing to be angry about so that you can actually intervene in a skillful way rather than just having it be vague and overwhelming and mismatched in various ways. Developing that precision and skill so that the anger doesn't it isn't is a tool, is an ally, is an asset, not something that creates more righteousness and then therefore creates more opposition and then therefore like doesn't actually achieve the aim. So that the anger in that case can be mixed with compassion, skill, with art, with a beautiful or seductive or like the mot juste, like the right word at the right time that is placed in the right way to create the right result. Right? So it's about refining the emotions so that action can take place skillfully. if that's helpful. But there's a lot to say about all of that. Yeah, Natalie.
Thank you, Clara and Justin. I was doing all right with my obscurations till that final part when we were on our back, and I encountered some, and I couldn't fully integrate as such. Since you've done it, I felt some more release of that obscuration. So I guess my question to you is, I should continue to do these breathing exercises or these yoga exercises. I found myself wanting to send kindness to that part of myself also, because that's kind of something I do when I find a blockage. Um, I, I guess I'm asking for some direction here to work with this. I feel like I didn't fully complete the exercise.
Yeah, can you explain what arose and where?
So in my abdomen, my lower abdomen, some issues about trust and doubt.
Mm-hmm. And then what did it feel like?
It was uncomfortable, not like a cramping feeling, but close to it.
Mm-hmm. Like kind of constriction. And is like any kind of heat involved or any other kind of texture?
Well, maybe a little warmth in the area where I felt it, whether it was hot or not, I couldn't really say.
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing is what you've already done, which is to contact it. And the extent to which you need to activate it to know it is the question. Like, does it need a little bit more attention, more activation, or is it just there as soon as you look? Like, oh, there it is again. I can feel it. But you need to have it be present, and you also need to not overactivate it. You can't freak it out by being, too involved. So have it there and feel it. And then, like you were saying, you bring awareness to it in a caring, present way. We're not ignoring it and not invading it and just being with it. And you can use the breath, you can use movement, whatever it might be that works to keep it alive and allow it to you just bear witness, allow it to speak and unfold in its own pace, in its own way. And you just stay with it. And that's it, really. And at a certain point, you'll be able to, it will yield and it will trust enough for you to be able to enter into it. And that initially may be overwhelming, but eventually, maybe entering and coming in and out, but eventually being able to be in the totality of that feeling that is uncomfortable and have it be the whole. And you are there, and you're not being annihilated, and it's not too much. Uh, at that point, then developing stability, familiarity in that way, at that point, then it can open into something that is unconditioned. The feelings might not go away, the rawness might still be there, the doubt or whatever it might be for you, but you can use that as a window for seeing something that is unconditioned and actually appreciate it as a gift that if you hadn't had that difficulty, that constriction, you wouldn't have the access to something that is unconditioned and deeply true. So the wound being actually a doorway is really important. But that takes time, and so you have to see where you're at in that progression. But mostly you just kind of hang out with it and give it time without ignoring it or invading it. Mm-hmm. Good, thanks. Good. Okay, so let's dedicate. I have something here that. Oh, why don't we just, Laura, do you have the natural Dharma one handy? Otherwise, I have.
Yeah, sure.
Giwa di nunu da zomba jimbo junju ne chua jajim alumba de sala gompa sho. By this ethical activity, may we swiftly realize the great perfection and thereby uplift each and every being to that same state.